You ever notice how sometimes nothing is technically wrong, yet your mind still feels heavy? Your job is stable, bills are getting paid, the routine is working exactly the way it's supposed to. You wake up, check your phone, get ready, commute, answer emails, maybe squeeze in a workout, then come home and do it all again tomorrow. From the outside, it looks like progress, but inside, there's this quiet tension, not stress exactly, just a constant background noise in your head that never fully switches off. And most people assume they need a vacation, a bigger paycheck, or some kind of life reset to fix that feeling. But here's the strange part. In many cases, the brain can reset itself in about 30 seconds without changing your job, your income, or your entire lifestyle. And the reason most people never experience that reset is surprisingly simple. Before we get into it, take a second to like the video and subscribe if you enjoy calm, psychology-based ideas like this. It helps the channel reach more people who are quietly trying to understand their lives a little better. Because what I'm about to show you is not a productivity trick. It's something much smaller, but much more revealing. And once you notice it, you'll start seeing why so many disciplined people still feel mentally exhausted even when everything seems to be working. And the real explanation might surprise you. Think about a typical weekday evening. You finished work, maybe you stopped by the grocery store, maybe you paid a bill, answered a few messages, checked your bank app. After taxes, rent or mortgage, the car payment, subscriptions, insurance, the numbers more or less balance out. Life is manageable. So you sit down for a moment, phone in hand, maybe scrolling through news, social media, or video, and suddenly you feel this strange mental fatigue, like your brain is quietly overheating. Nothing dramatic happened, but your mind still feels crowded. And here's the subtle reason. Most people never give their brain a clean stopping point. Your mind is constantly carrying unfinished loops, small things. Emails you haven't answered yet, a credit card payment due next week, that awkward moment in a meeting earlier today, a subscription you meant to cancel, a conversation you should probably have. Individually, these things are tiny, but the brain treats unfinished loops like open browser tabs, each one quietly consuming mental energy. And when there are too many tabs open, the system slows down. This is where the 30-second reset comes in. And it doesn't involve meditation, breathing exercises, or positive thinking. It's something far simpler. But most people never try it because it feels almost too obvious. And once you hear it, you might realize why your brain rarely gets the signal that the day is actually over. Here's the reset. When you notice that mental noise building up, pause for 30 seconds and close one loop. Not 10 things, not a productivity sprint, just one small unfinished loop. Maybe you send the short message you've been delaying. Maybe you schedule the payment instead of remembering it. Maybe you write down tomorrow's one priority on a sticky note. Maybe you simply decide that something doesn't need attention today. That's it. One loop closed. What happens next is subtle, but very real. Your brain registers completion, and completion is the psychological signal that allows the nervous system to relax. This is the same reason crossing something off a list feels oddly satisfying. The brain finally stops tracking that open thread. But here's the part most people overlook. The average working adult carries dozens of these open loops every single day. Work tasks, financial decisions, social expectations, tiny lifestyle maintenance decisions, which streaming service to keep, whether the car insurance renewal is coming soon, whether that side project is still worth continuing. None of these things feel big enough to deserve attention, but together they quietly fill the background of your mind. And when the background is crowded, even simple evenings feel exhausting. That's why some people earning decent salaries still feel strangely drained, not because life is failing, but because their brain never gets closure. And this is where quietly intelligent people tend to behave differently. They don't necessarily work less, they don't have fewer responsibilities, but they are extremely protective of cognitive closure. When something small appears in their mental space, they either act on it quickly or intentionally park it somewhere reliable. A calendar, a note, a simple list. Anything that tells the brain this is handled, because the brain doesn't care whether a problem is solved today or next week. It only cares whether the system is tracking it. Without that system, the brain keeps checking again and again and again. This constant checking is what creates that invisible mental fatigue many people carry for years without realizing the source. And over time, the cost becomes more than just tired evenings. It affects focus, decision-making, even how satisfied people feel with perfectly stable lives. Two people can have the same income, the same apartment, the same daily routine, but the one whose mind is full of open loops will always feel slightly more overwhelmed. Not because their life is harder, but because their brain never receives enough closure signals. And this is why the 30-second reset matters. Not because it solves everything, but because it interrupts the accumulation. One closed loop, then another tomorrow, and slowly the background noise begins to fade. The interesting thing is, people often expect clarity to come from big life changes, a new job, a new city, a new routine, but many times clarity comes from something much smaller. Simply teaching your brain that unfinished things do not need to live in your head all day. They can live on paper, in a calendar, or be finished quickly and forgotten. And once that habit becomes normal, a subtle shift shifts. Your mind becomes quieter. Not because life is easier, but because your brain finally trusts that things will be handled. And that trust is often the difference between a life that feels heavy and one that quietly feels manageable. So the next time your mind feels crowded for no obvious reason, try the 30-second reset. Close one loop, just one, and notice what happens next. If this idea made you pause and think for a moment, leave a comment with the word reset. I'm curious how many people recognize this pattern in their own lives. And if you want more calm, psychology-based reflections like this, consider subscribing to the channel. Sometimes the smallest mental shifts quietly change everything, and the next one might be even simpler than this one.